G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Andrew Jones from Invercarron Farm, based here in Hobart, Tasmania. Thanks for your time today, Andrew.
Thank you, Troy. Appreciate it.
Let's start with how we know each other. So that's Michael Dennehy from Collins SBA here in Hobart that thought you might be a great guest to come on.
Yeah, no, Michael and I go back a long way. We opened the batting together in a cricket premiership. I think that might have been in about 1996 or 7. So, we still talk about it. I know him well.
Yeah, I was going to guess that it was probably cricket that you guys knew each other. Yeah. Well, tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So farming is where I am now, but my life has really been in travel. So I started out with Thomas Cook Travel, which is no longer with us, and I started with them in, I think it was 1987, and I then established Andrew Jones Travel in 1993.
Right.
So and then we did, that was my core business for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Great. And when did you get out of that?
Beginning of 2017 was when the contract was set, the business was settled. So
yeah.
Fortunately, I think I got the timing of that pretty right, I think.
Absolutely. So that's like 24 years you were running that.
Didn't quite get to 25.
Yeah,
I think I was there with the handcuffs on when at the 25th year, I think, but didn't quite get there.
I read something the other day about the global travel predictions. I don't know if you still keep across it, but there's 2019, there were 4.5 billion trips around the world. And with the growing affluence, particularly in Asia, they're projecting that to double by 2039, even after COVID.
Oh, look, everyone loves to travel, and it's becoming so accessible now. So look, I'm not surprised by the numbers. How many will be around to service that volume, particularly from a travel agent perspective, after what's going to, what will unfold possibly the next 12 months? Look, there's no doubt the travel will come back, and hopefully hopefully most of my colleagues survive, former colleagues survive.
Yeah. I was really surprised. I think the article said only 1% of the world's population flies or travels by air.
I didn't know it was that low, but to generate 39 billion, you'd think all would be flying, but probably right.
4.5 billion trips a year. So I did the math. I think it was like an average of 65 trips per person. So there must be a lot of busy business people out there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
So and now you're retired on the farm?
Yeah, so we sort of, Karen and I, my wife who was in the business the whole journey other than the first week, we went back and sort of my father was selling up. He'd had enough. And in 2011, sort of the Joneses had farmed the Jordan Valley since 1818. I think we were first recorded as being farmers.
Wow.
We started out at Jericho, and he'd had enough, so he sold the original farm that had been in the family for about 100 years and sort of offered the farm where I grew up to the farmer next door, and was at that point where luckily the farmer next door said no, and Karen and I had a chat and thought, I'd sort of made myself redundant a little bit at work, which is everyone says what you need to try and do. So I had an excellent GM and who ended up buying into the 10% of the business. So about 10 years earlier. So it sort of just timing's everything, and we brought the farm in 2011 out of our super.
Yep.
It's been there 10 years and certainly have diversified a lot since then.
Yep.
In sort of farming's a volume business, so if you've got scope, but when you don't have the scope, it's like any business, I guess, like a 3-person travel agency. It's you need 10, or you need to have some scale.
Yes.
And farming's certainly one of those.
And what do you do on the farm?
We do sheep. So we do merino. We have merinos, good flock, nice flock of merinos now. We have prime lamb, and we've now diversified. We've now got some luxury accommodation, which has gone absolutely berserk. Which
Right.
I must admit is part of that figure you stated before, which is I think $20 billion is not being spent on overseas travel by Australians at the moment, but
Yep.
they're certainly spending it internally, and Tassie's a beneficiary of that for sure.
Yeah.
And then we've got our vineyard with half of that sort of, we sell the grapes, and half of it we're in the process of creating a wine brand and selling half of that.
Great. Sorry, just going back to, did you say it was 1818 that your family founded the farm?
We started farming in the Jordan Valley in 1818, so we've always had different
Right.
farms in the Jordan Valley, not this one particular
No.
farm that I'm on now, but
Yeah.
there was, Joneses all spread up through there.
Yeah.
And
That's over 200 years now. Wow. 203. Wow.
Yep. And I went to the cricket a couple of years ago in Birmingham, and I went to the church where Benjamin and Elizabeth Jones got married in, I think it was 1777 or something like that. So
Yep. Wow.
it was we've traced our history back, and it was quite special.
And 1993, when you started Andrew Jones Travel, how old were you then when you decided?
I was 25 at the time.
Yep. Great.
I now have a 25-year-old son, and I must say I don't know what I was doing. I don't know how it ever came about, really. I must admit, I look back on it now and think, what the hell was I doing?
Yeah, I was going to ask, so what made you jump to running your own business?
I'd been with Thomas Cook for 4 to 5 years in Hobart, and then I won a sort of a Victoria Tasmania Sales Award, and then they encouraged me to move over to Melbourne. So Karen and I moved over to Melbourne. We weren't married at that point, and probably didn't do my research geographically. And I was working in Dandenong, and she was working in Moonee Ponds, and probably wasn't a smart move.
A lot of travel.
A lot of travel. And we did not enjoy Melbourne, but there was a travel business down in Howrah. A guy used to work out of his garage, and he was doing a terrible job. His service levels were terrible, but everyone went to him. And he shut down while we're in Melbourne, and I was working away. I think I was earning 28 grand or something like that, and I just thought, there's a pretty good opportunity here. If he can do it out of a garage, I reckon I can do it in a low serviced office in Hobart, and I think this can work. So away we came home, and away we went. Rest is history, really.
Right. And do you have any key numbers to illustrate the growth over those 24 years?
It's a good question. It's we obviously started out at zero. And by the time when we sold the business, it was turning over 40 million in sales.
Wow.
So that was sort of, you equate that to about 5 million in revenue or commissions. And I don't think there was a year that we didn't grow. We did certainly. I don't think we went backwards. Some years we sort of were similar, but every year we certainly grew that business over the time, and certainly some years were bigger than others. But it was very consistent, the growth over that time.
And what about number of full-time equivalent or FTE team members? Just started out with yourself?
So I started on my own, and then Karen joined me. She had to break a contract at Telstra to come and join me because I just couldn't cope with it. And then when we sold, we would have had, I think there was 40 to 45 on the books, with probably about 35 FTEs at that time.
Wow, Andrew, that's phenomenal growth. Well done.
It was good fun. It was great.
When was the moment you felt like you'd succeeded?
Look, it's a good question. There was one that sticks out. I think it was really, really early on, and there was still just Karen and I, and we were heading over to Melbourne just for a weekend, and Karen was doing all the books manually, and she was the back end of the business, and I was really at the front end, just sort of doing all the selling. And she sort of said, "Oh, I've just sort of added up all our commissions. I don't think I can't remember what month it was." And she said, "Oh, our commissions were 20,000." And I said, "Oh, right." And I said, "Oh, what were the costs?" And she said, "Oh, I think we're costs were around 5,000." I thought, far out. We made 15 grand in 1 month. And it was like, and I thought, that's, when you're only getting paid 28,
Yeah.
or whatever. And at the time, it was probably a little bit of a false economy, because I think I was paying Karen $100 a week, and
Yep.
I don't think I was paying myself at all. But
Mm.
at that point, I knew I knew it was going to work.
Yep.
When that was just the two of us, and so I think, sort of to answer your question, I did know it was going to succeed very early, if we stuck to our model, which was low cost, and just grow it.
And great
Um,
service from the sounds of it.
and so we were a service based business. It was all relationships and service for sure.
Yep. Yep. And what does success look like to you?
That's a good question. I think just being respected by your peers, I think, is to me, I think by the end of it, Andrew Jones Travel was probably one of the most respected travel agents, not just in Tasmania, but in Australia, I think, as an independent travel agent. We'd always battled against, the flight centres and all the big boys, and in the corporate travel space, we were, in the early days, competing against the airlines, and then all the corporate travel providers. So I think it was just nice to know that people sort of respected you, and you just had this fantastic repeat client base. So success to me, that's why I felt successful, because we were respected as a business, and I guess I was probably hopefully respected as an individual as well.
Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast growing business?
I think word of mouth is massive. I think there was one thing I would have loved to have done, is that, and that is never spend any money on marketing and actually just see how our business did go purely based on word of mouth. We never actually had the courage to do that. We always did quite a bit of press. Press was probably our main one, because social media hadn't, it's funny, social media was big, reasonably big when we sold, but not like it is now.
Oh.
So being based where we were, marketing was really word of mouth. And I think one decision we made is not trying to be all things to all people with our marketing. In the end, we just marketed, trying not to be elite, but we just sort of marketed. You could do 40 Bali quotes, or you could do one big Europe booking. So, we tried to be a little bit more niche in the end, and not try to be all things to all people. So,
Very wise.
I think if I was going to recommend marketing, just really try and narrow it down. But social media does change that. I'm seeing now what my daughter can do, who does have a marketing degree, with Instagram and Facebook, and you run prizes, and you see your Instagram followers grow by the minute, and that's a whole different space to what I was involved in.
Yeah, I think your point though of jack of all trades, master of none, really having a focus or a niche is still relevant these days. The market, how you market that activity is different. I certainly made that mistake early on in my business career over 20 years ago now, just trying to do too much, trying to please everyone, and it just doesn't work.
That's exactly what we had. We were doing Gold Coast and Melbourne and New Zealand and all of that, and it also, where you've got to work to your strengths with your staff too. Your staff don't want to be doing, it was difficult to get staff. So niche marketing, it's an old term that gets thrown around all the time, but as you said, it doesn't go away.
And what about funding your business? Did you have other investors or bank finance at all?
So right at the very beginning, I mentioned to my old man that I was going to do this, and I remember I rang him and I said, "Dad, I think we're going to move home from Melbourne, and I'm going to start up my own travel agency." And he said, "Oh," he didn't say anything, and then he rang me back about 10 minutes later and said, "Mate, you want to make sure you're going to earn more money than what you're earning now."
Yep.
And he did throw the F-bomb in there. I think vividly I remember that. He's been a farmer who, and then he gave me 17,000, I think, to start it off. And which I think when we sold, I paid that back. I didn't give him the interest, but I did pay that back. I was quite pleased to be able to do that. As they were, so that was it. So it was a very good business in regards to it was low capital. I just started out with a desk, a phone, and a filing cabinet, and I think the rent in our office was $50 a week. And
oh my God, 93, geez.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was how it was very low cost.
Yep.
So that was. Yeah, and it was great not to have to buy stock or an existing business or anything like that.
Yeah. So funded through profits primarily.
Yep.
If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry? This is an interesting one.
Well, being travel, I think it's a very interesting question. It has changed so much. I mean, so has every business, but it has changed so much in regards to, the airlines, the cruise companies. One, their commissions are nowhere near what they used to be. They want direct business. There's now all the loyalty programs that are trying to attract those customers directly. I think I would, with the pent-up demand that you alluded to earlier, if I was 10 years younger, I would probably go back in and give it another go in travel, but not now. I'm too old to do it, and I've been there and done that. So, but there's some huge opportunities coming up for it because half the flight centre offices are shut down. Probably half the independent agents are going to go.
Yep.
It's a unique question in a unique industry, really, because it's travels. Nothing's been affected like travel. So the answer to your question is I would, but it wouldn't be the fun that it used to be, and it probably would be more difficult to make money.
Yeah. I've also read that the business travel is going to really fall off a cliff, in particularly.
But CTM, who brought our business, corporate travel management, which we'll probably talk about later, their share price is nearly pre-COVID levels now, and it hasn't even come back.
Wow. Okay. Right.
So work that one out.
Yeah.
Their shares went down to $5 and now they're 22 or something, and and business travel hasn't picked up really. No. So I can't work that out.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Look, the biggest mistake I made, and it's funny, the whole running a small business is stressful the whole time. So, these people think, you've got a nice house and you drive a nice car, or you own a farm or a vineyard, and you're so lucky. And to everyone listening here who's got a small business, man, oh man, you don't sleep at night, for so many nights, and you just worry about it. So,
as I say to people, it is fucking hard to run.
I've got no hair left. I'm about 20 kilos more, probably more, 30 kilos more than what I should be. But, anyone thinks they go into a small business and make heaps of money like some of their friends might have, it isn't as easy as what it looks. And, and I think, look, one thing I did learn at 25, nothing worried me. Yep. You just ping the ears back and away you go.
Yeah.
But then when you get to 50 or, I am now, I don't know, I'm not a worrier, but things seem to be on your mind a lot more. So I think the younger you are, that's when I'd be starting out, have a go. But the most stressful point was right at the very beginning. I didn't back myself in. I said I had a phone, a desk and a filing cabinet. I should have ordered a reservation system to actually book the flights, because they locked you into 3 and 5 year contracts, and I didn't order that system, and that was pretty stressful when the business was going gangbusters, and yet you didn't have the technology to actually service the business. So that you had to do make bookings with airlines and everyone all over the phone. So that was only 3 months of stress. We certainly ordered and got that in pretty quickly, but I think there was a lesson in that. And now I learned we could have ordered the computer system, and if it didn't work out, they wouldn't have enforced a contract, because what can they do?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that was probably that was stressful at that time. And look, our industry, gee whiz, we dealt with some serious, Bali bombings, 9/11s, SARS,
Yeah.
even there was a foot and mouth, or whatever it was called in the UK, the GFC. There was just stress points all the way
Yep.
through.
Yeah. And what area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Oh, customer service. Yeah, servicing. Yeah, servicing the growth for sure. Like that was what we had to work on, because when you name the business after yourself and you're in a relatively small town, if you don't service that business, people's word soon gets around,
Yes.
and your business won't grow. So I think, yeah, definitely our servicing was probably the most important thing, making sure we got that right.
Yeah, Hobart feels a bit like a small country town, but it's quite large, but I guess small in the context of a lot of cities around Australia. For the context of the overseas audience, Hobart's population is about 220,000 people. So you would be bumping into a lot of your customers in the street or at the pub.
It's a good thing and it's a bad thing. And for us, it was a good thing. Yeah.
What have you enjoyed least about managing the fast growth?
Oh, look, I was a travel consultant, and I think I was a natural salesperson. And as the business grew, the staff numbers grew, and what did I enjoy the least would be HR,
Yep, people.
for sure. Yeah, and I love people, and I love dealing with the people, and I love the staff. But every now and again, you'd get someone who would just go too far, and that was disappointing. And that's what I enjoyed the least, when sort of people would take advantage of you. You try and do the right thing by everyone, but no matter how good you are, or how good your culture is, or how many people you employ, I think there'll be always someone who tries to take advantage of that at times.
Yeah, as I like to say, people are the hardest thing in small business, and where the values actually can't grow one on your own, really.
No, I trod on eggshell for 25 years.
And what do you love most about growing a small business?
I think it's the thrill of the chase. It's in your blood. I don't think as a kid or whatever, anyone says, I want to run a small business. They also want to be maybe a doctor, a lawyer, or, a nurse, or, whatever. But not many people say, I want to start a small business. So it's just, I just loved the success, of the reward that you get, for all the hard work. So it was really hard early, and stressful, and then over time it grew. And whilst the stress was still there, I love seeing the business grow. So what did I like the most? It wasn't the financial reward. It was the fact that you'd succeeded over time, over a long period of time.
Yep. And what's been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
I think it would have to be certainly technology. The internet came in. I'll never forget a guy came into me. I'll never forget his name, but he came into me in the mid-90s or whatever, and said, "There's this thing in America called the internet. And you want to keep an eye out, because it's going to be big." And I just thought he was full of shit. And
Yeah.
it's typical American gloating about what sometimes Americans talk
Yep.
too much. And oh God, imagine if I had registered travel.com or something like that.
Exactly.
I wouldn't be sitting here now talking about small business. So
Yeah.
I think mindset shift was definitely around technology, how fast that was growing in my time.
What is the number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I think you've just got to create a great culture. I think we might talk about that a bit later, but I just liked creating that team environment, and the habit about what can we do to make sure the staff are happy, make sure the clients are happy, and so yeah, I think that's sort of my answer to that question, really. And yeah, making sure the staff are happy
Can
and
you talk?
enjoy coming to work.
Be the change you want to see in your business. Become more productive and less stressed with our free Transform Your Performance online course. Once you see the benefits, put your entire team through the course at no cost. We start out by telling you the secret to guaranteed success, then over 100 lessons help you be more focused, present, productive, and feel more in control about work. growasmallbusiness.com.
Yeah, well, that's the next question. Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
Oh, look, we could do this podcast for 3 hours if you wanted to talk about some mistakes. But I think I always. It's funny, people would not. We always went by the fact that if there was a good person came along, put them on.
Yep.
Don't wait. That was my attitude. Was back yourself in. Because good people are hard to find.
Absolutely.
And if you find someone, employ them, because they will come. The business will come. So we did that so many times. So they were our wins. I remember I employed a lady who booked about 3 or 4 holidays with us, and she would have been mid-50s and at that time, I think. And it was our industry was often a very young sort of industry, and that's when cruising was going, starting to really grow. And cruising's not a young person's game, or even probably still isn't. But I just knew this lady would be great with the more senior market of cruising. So she had no travel experience at all, but I knew she could relate well to these people, and we employed her and trained her up. And I think she only retired a couple of years ago. Maybe she retired just before she turned 70, but she was absolutely fantastic. So I did. That was probably one of my biggest wins. Look, mistakes far out. We had to deal with someone who told us they had a brain tumor, but and they didn't have a brain tumor. And it was a girl who said she was going for a driving lesson because we needed to drive the work car, and she was at the hairdressers. And oh man, there's some classic HR stories. But talk more about the positives. I think certainly if you find someone good, put them on.
Yeah, I agree with that. What about culture?
And we did that for 25 years.
Yep.
Look, I think that's probably as. Go on.
Sorry, I think there was a bit of a lag there. That's right. No, I was going to ask the next question. What are some things you'd recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Oh, look, the staff always love it when you socialise with them. I don't, and I don't mind a drink and a good time. And obviously, there's a line you don't cross. But every time one of my staff, celebrated 5 years or 10 years or 15, we'd always have a function for that person. We'd fund it. If Andrew Jones Travel turned 10 years or 15 years and 20 years. So we had a great area in our office, or we'd go out for dinner, and, we gave them things to reward that type of achievement. So look, I think you just, once again, it comes back to your staff, and we had a great culture. We lost one staff member to a competitor in 25 years. So
wow.
And we weren't paying way above what anyone else would pay or whatever. I think we just created a great small to medium business. I guess it turned out in the end, we created, we had a name where people knew that we looked after our staff, and it was just a great culture. I think creating, to any advice to anyone out there, is that's what you'd concentrate on the most. And I had to give a talk to Australian Pacific Tours once, who a lot of people would know about. They came to Hobart, and I think I quoted to them was, I think it was the Paul Roos Sydney Swans no dickhead policy. I think that is very, very true. I think if you have someone in your business that is causing trouble, no matter how successful they are as a salesperson in your business or whatever role they take, get rid of them. Get rid of them, because they will be a cancer in your business. And I know they may make you a lot of money, but I think the negatives far outweigh what the positives is that one individual can do. So,
Yeah.
and they can wreck your culture.
Yeah, and your A players will start leaving if you don't act on it.
Correct.
It was the New Zealand All Blacks that stole Paul Roos's no dickhead policy for the All Blacks team. I think that they called it the no arsehole rule, and they had it painted on their change rooms to, in the 15 or so years ago when they really were dominating, as they often do, the rugby scene.
It has worked for them.
It has.
Not that I follow the rugby that much, but I still don't think we've beaten them, or we might have beaten them recently. But yeah, long time.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
Yeah, that was tough. We started the business in 93 and we had our first child in 96 and then another one in 97 and then another one in 03. So that was probably a time that if I could have it back, you would. But you can't change things. But yeah, did I spend enough time at home in those early years? Probably not, because our business was still growing enormously at that time. So, and also Cam was an integral part of the business as well. How we got through it, I don't know. But it was. How did I manage it? I don't know. We just had to just wing it, and as long as you're aware of it. But if you asked me how did I handle it, I just ran with it and just it worked. But it was a tough time. It was it was definitely Karen had come home with a baby and I'd have 40 files on the kitchen table, while I was trying to balance and get the work done while she was she was breastfeeding a young baby and so on. So that was probably the most, certainly, if not the most challenging time. Certainly one of them, aside from all the other disasters that happened in travel. So it's a hard one. It's you've got to get the balance right though. Because you go too hard on the work, it'll affect your personal life, and if you don't spend enough time in the business and you spend it doing other things, your business won't work. So that's a really tough question, and I just wish I had the perfect answer. But I tried playing cricket, early on, and my cricket career ended fairly early than what it should have. And I look back on it now and thought, geez, I wish I'd have played cricket more. But you just couldn't. Just couldn't.
What about professional development over the years? Books, courses, training, conferences?
If I had a weakness, that'd be it. For sure. Things just happened, I guess you say professional development, we set up a corporate division in our business, which sort of, I'm diversifying a little bit, but did professional development help our business, or did timing help our business? And, I just think that sometimes things, just happen, and I sort of, one thing I thought I'd mention, it was a classic example, 9/11 happened, and we were on holidays, and I thought that was just going to be the end of the business. I thought, how's the world going to recover from this? And that's at the time we were trying to get into corporate business, because Ansett Qantas were just going hammer and tongs. You couldn't get any corporate business at all. And then, 9/11, I think, happened on the Monday, and then on the Friday, Ansett went broke.
Wow.
And, and then, Qantas then started handing over this corporate business because they wanted BHP and Rio Tinto. They didn't want the small stuff that Tassie had. So, that wasn't, professional development. That was things like that seem to just happen every now and again. And so I was more about, let's take some risks and diversify a little bit, and professional development did fall away a little bit. I must admit that was one of my weaknesses, but in saying that, in travel, you had a lot of opportunities to send people away on what we call educationals or familiarisations. So that was basically, we did that, and we funded a lot of that. Like a lot of these competitors would say, I can't keep staff and we keep losing staff. And I was saying, well, funny that, because every time I see a freebie being offered, you're the one taking it. You're not letting the staff go. So, I always say, so I think sort of in-house training. We did more towards the end and courses, but it was more on the job.
Yep.
You know, obviously the owners mainly were mainly the ones that went to the conferences. We're certainly more cognizant of it in the end,
Yeah.
but in the early days, there wasn't a lot of professional development going on. No.
Have you had any mentors or coaches along the way?
No, not really. Not anyone specifically. Like when I was really young, you know, I just, or not really young, but at any time, I think the advice I could give is just ask as many people. I just love asking questions, you know, and even if you delve into maybe a little bit too much and ask about profitability or whatever, if people aren't willing to give you that information, that's okay. But I just loved, you know, asking my peers, you know, when we, you know, the travel industry has various buying groups. So, you know, every now, like in late 90s, I moved into the American Express Representative Network, which was a group of a couple of hundred agents all around Australia. And I remember going to those conferences and just asking questions of those successful agents that were in that network. And I learned so much from those guys by just picking their brains. You know, they were my mentors or coaches, just those sort of people who I ended up being similar. And that's why I love sharing information. You know, I'm happy to, I think in business, there's nothing to hide. There's enough business out there for all of us.
Yeah.
You don't have to be secretive about it. Share your information.
Yeah, I agree. And did you have a board of directors or advisors?
No. I obviously had an accountant, you know, where you'd go and, you know, you'd pick his brains on certain decisions, but I didn't have a board of directors. I was obviously the Magellan Travel Group that we set up, we had a board for that. And, you know, the franchise network or the buying group network you're in often had an advisory board, but no, not my business. It was me, my wife, and then Nathan, who brought in later on. We'd sit down and we'd make all the decisions.
And you're one of the few that I've had on the cast that's actually exited a business. So is there anything you do differently, or talking about the exits specifically, or any advice for those listening?
Oh, look, it was funny, you know. It was sort of it was my own business and Karen's, and obviously we had the kids who grew up with us having this business. You know, we took them on so many holidays. So, you know, we felt they were part of the journey. I'd sort of got to a point where I had the farm was starting to really, you know, take up quite a bit of time. I had the buying group, the Magellan buying group business, and I had Andrew Jones Travel. So I was starting to feel as though I was winding up as against winding down, even though I'd sort of made myself redundant at Andrew Jones Travel. So at a point, like Andrew Jones Travel had two components of our business. We had a retail group, which is the network, you know, Bali's and Fiji's and cruising and all the leisure travel, you'd call it. And then we had a corporate division. So we're one of the few agencies in Australia that were sort of split half and half. Most do 90-10 or 80-20, either way. So we had a really good balanced business, and somehow we managed up doing the travel for the Australian swimming team, and then at one point we were doing corporate travel for the Australian rowing team and water polo and hockey, I think. So we created this nice little niche division of our corporate business. And so at the end, in 2016, I just had a feeling, I just had a gut feeling that, you know, a new CFO or whatever had been put in at swimming, and, you know, that was our real key one, was, you know, hang your hat on Australian swimming. And I just knew we were going to get shafted, you know, and so sort of thinking to myself, what, you know, how much further do I want to take this business? And I just picked up the phone one day and rang Jamie Ferris at CTM, who I'd networked with over the years, and he was looking to grow and acquire, and it all went from there. So and it all happened very, very quickly. That was sort of in the October, and by the December it was announced, and in the February we settled. So
wow, less than 6 months. That's phenomenal.
Oh, it was very quick, and it was good. to deal with someone who was like-minded. I think if you're going to sell your business, work out very quickly.
Yep.
Is this person like-minded and, you know, and it has the same values as what you do, or is this someone who just wants to, you know, come and pick something up and, you know, shaft all the team and, you know, get some synergies and make, you know, and so I knew we had the right buyer, because 10 years earlier, you know, Flight Centre had approached us and I was only 40 at the time and it just didn't feel right. So I think it felt right. The staff, obviously, some of them didn't like it. Probably now the ones that are left are pretty happy, because at least a public listed company can still keep the business going, where we wouldn't have been able to do that. But you know, as far as exiting the business, would I have done anything differently? You know, I still miss the people, for sure. But I don't think you could ask anyone who tried a travel business pre-COVID whether they'd do anything differently.
Yeah.
You know, I was very, very, very lucky. You know, I would be broke now.
Yep. And out of interest, on the valuation method used, I'm assuming it would have been something like 3 years on EBITDA multiple.
Yes, yeah. We have business valued twice over the previous sort of 10 years to the sale. So and both times the valuation came out at 4.5 times.
Yeah.
So you know, CTM or Jamie came back and said, "This is what we think it's worth," and this is where he was very fair. I just sat down. I said, "Look, this is what the EBITDA of the business has been the last 3 years.
Yep.
I don't want any more than 4.5 times. If you're happy to pay 4.5 times," and he just said, "Done. Well, we're happy to do that." So it was very fair and very reasonable. And you know, could we have got more? Maybe. Could we have got? You know, did we get a good price, or were overpaid? You know, who knows? But it was a good outcome for myself and Nathan, the other director. And you know, he was one of these guys where people try and, you know, maybe want you to stay on for 2 years or 5 years or whatever. And I just had 2 8-month contracts with them. And at the end of the first 8 months, I said, "I'm done." And he said, "No worries, good luck." And we haven't spoken since.
Yep.
So yeah, it all worked out really well.
All right, Andrew, on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
It would be servicing the growth. If you're on a real fast-growing strategy, for sure. And then what comes with that is the managing the staff.
Yep. Favorite business book which helped you the most?
I only read one.
That's an easy answer then.
It's my favourite, and I can't remember who told. I can remember who told me this. Read this book. It was an ex-AFL footballer who went into business. I can't remember his name. He played at the Bulldogs, but I met him at a function once, and it was called the entrepreneurial myth, or the E-myth by
Michael Gerber. That's it.
Yeah, that's the only book I've ever read, and I quote that a lot, because there's the manager, the entrepreneur, and the technician. And there are so many travel agents that are technicians.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, who think maybe they can be a manager, or maybe they can one day set up their own. But no, they can't.
I thought you were going to say that book. It's the first book I recommend to people. It's one of my favourite books. But anyone thinking of starting, but particularly growing a business, you should definitely read that book. Out of interest, what year would that have been that you read that?
Oh, mid-90s.
Right. Well, that's good timing.
I reckon it was mid-90s that I read that book, and it was so true, true. So that was a good book. And as I said, I must say, my book reading now is sporting autobiographies every now and again on a holiday. I'm a terrible reader. Yep.
The next question is, any great podcasts or online learning tools you use?
Before my time, Roy. I've just downloaded the podcast app, so but it won't be business ones. I'm probably going to listen to. So no podcasts.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I think it's great. You've got to have a good accountant.
Yeah,
you've got to have one. I think you've got to have one key person that you can go to outside the business. And so, I think, and I was lucky enough to, we did move accountants as due to retirement, but it was, it's just nice to be able to pick up the phone and bounce an idea off someone, you know, which they're not attached to your business. So, and that certainly it came into play when we were selling the business.
Yep.
You know, like I was, man, I was way out of the depth. You know, like I'm dealing with a guy who's got who's was in the top 50, wealthiest people in Australia, or whatever it was, or the top 200, at the time. He's not now, by the way, but because of the COVID. But and that was intimidating. So I was just a travel agent basically, and I'd learn a bit over the journey. But I think that is a good tool. Get one really. Don't get a good accountant and a good advisor.
All right, finally, my favourite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
Pig your ears back. Pig your ears back. Take a risk. I think people just back yourself in.
Yep.
It'll work. If you're confident in yourself, it'll work. Don't doubt yourself.
Yep.
Just and have fun.
Great advice. Thanks for your time today, Andrew. I think the audience got a shit ton of value out of your journey and what you've shared with us today. Congratulations on your success. That's a wonderful journey.
Thanks, Troy. I really appreciate it. Great to meet you.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.